Hello and welcome to Rajya Sabha Television. I am Vishal Dahiya and you're watching our special show, India Fights Back. Today we're going to talk about the vaccine dosage norms. Now, if you look at the global scenario, then there are several vaccine candidates which are in various stages of development. And while in some countries, some vaccine candidates have been given approval by the regulators, in India too, emergency use authorization has been given to two vaccine candidates, that is Covaxin and Covishield. There are several norms which have come in public domain, one from WHO, the other from US FDA as well. We'll try and understand the aspects related to vaccine dosage. And for more on this, we're joined by a distinguished panel of guests today. Let me first introduce them to you, beginning with Professor N.K. Ganguly. He is the former Director General of Indian Council of Medical Research, that is ICMR. We're also joined by Dr. Santasabuj. He's Scientist F with ICMR's NICED in Kolkata. And we also have with us Dr. Dhruva Chaudhry. He is a Senior Professor and Head of the Pulmonary and Critical Care Medicine at PGIMS in Rohtak, Haryana. Welcome, all of you gentlemen, to Rajya Sabha Television. And let me begin with you, Professor Ganguly. Let's start by understanding the basics here. Why exactly are dosages so important? And then what's the criteria which decides as far as dosages of vaccines are concerned? And what's the scenario for some of these vaccine candidates which have been given approval?
Now, dosages, Vishal, are actually determined in the phase 2 part of the trial. They vary the dosages to find out what is the optimum dose in which you get the maximum immune response and where it is safe. So both Moderna and Pfizer use from 25 microgram to 50, 100 to 50, and they found that 100 and above, the side reactions were very high. So they scaled it down. And the Oxford vaccine used 5 into 10 to the power 10, two doses, that's 28 days apart. And they got about 70.45 in a larger analysis, but they also do sometimes side analysis. In side analysis, what they found that if they use 2.5 as 10 power 10 as the first dose and then give the normal dose after 28 days, they reach up to 90% immune response. In the same way, the Pfizer as well as Moderna, they have also reanalyzed their small sets of data, and they have found that even after the first injection, they get adequate immune responses. And Johnson & Johnson's vaccine, which is only one shot vaccine, they're reaching somewhere around that. So at this given moment, there has been two very major things which have happened. Like in US, it is a catastrophe, and in UK also it is a catastrophe. So what UK decided, it has not been approved by their regulator. What UK decided, they will mix with the Pfizer and the Covishield. They call it Oxford, and there they have put in their argument. And because they think that if they really cover, there will not be enough vaccine, so they want to do this. Mixing of vaccine is a major issue. If I get a second chance, I will explain it to you. The second thing which they have decided, that they will give the first dose and delay the second dose. And up to 3 months they will delay. The US, what it has decided, and the government has decided, along with the scientists, and put it in the US FDA, that they will use half the dose of Moderna vaccine. That also give adequate immune response, so that they can immunize double the persons and they can cope up with the production. So these are some of the things which have been done, and the scientists have been analyzing the larger data and coming up with the novel dosing schedules. However, the regulator has to approve approve it. Without
Okay.
regulators approval, the government can't do anything. As far as the Indian two vaccines are concerned, the Oxford vaccine got every vaccine is emergency approval. Oxford vaccine has got emergency approval. The Bharat Biotech vaccine hasn't completed the phase 3 data and doesn't have phase 3 immunogenicity data, but their phase 1 and phase 2 data is very strong, and they say that the neutralizing antibodies are very good and it is safe, and they have safety data for a short while in the phase 3 also, and they argued that it could be used. So regulator has given a very with approval with some restrictions. They can
Okay.
use it if there is a vaccine shortage, so government can use it. So it is up to government. And in the mutated strain, since this is a whole cell vaccine, it has got more antigens. Others are only spike protein. So mutations have happened everywhere. And now there are 79 mutations in India of the UK type. South African type is, of course, very bad, though they can use it in the mutants. So
Okay.
very clear cut recommendations have been made.
Okay, okay. Clearly, that puts the things in perspective out there, and I'll definitely come back to you, Professor Ganguly, on the mixing of dosages part as well. But let me first also bring in Dr. Dhruv and Dr. Das here. First to you, Dr. Dhruv, in terms of the vaccines which have been given emergency use authorization here in India, that is Covishield and Covaxin. What's the dosage criteria on them?
You see, it's the same. I think Professor Ganguly has already explained it. I am involved with that trial of Covaxin, and it has been one of the first few where we have been done it. We have already completed phase 1 and phase 2. So we are using the 2-dose schedule. In this, we are now using 6 microgram, because in the first phase we looked at the safety and we looked at the second, the dosing between 3 and 6. Today we are now recommending 6 microgram, and that is what we are doing in the real life scenario. So Covaxin we are using, and we have now experience of more than 800 cases in our institution of using it. I can assure our viewers about the safety of the vaccine. There should not be any doubt about it. As far as the immunogenicity is concerned, the data which has been shared with us of phase 1 and phase 2, as Professor Ganguly said, that is also robust. The only issue has come up in terms of efficacy, which probably will be time. It's an extraordinary time. So looking at the safety and immunogenicity data, practically you will see it with the 6 mics. 98% immunity has been, immunogenicity has been there. So that means it is safe, and it is 2 times higher than what we have looked at the phase 1. And schedule we have kept it here. Initially it was 0 and 14 in the phase 1. Phase 2 we looked at 0 and 28. And now in the phase 3 we are giving 0 and 28. So what I presume is, looking at it, as for the Covaxin, it is going to be 0 and 28. As far as the Covishield is concerned, it's the same thing. And obviously the regulator has also gone with the approval done by the UK, and they are also expecting them to do the bridging numbers of the cases in the country. Again, it will be having 2 schedules. And what Professor Ganguly very elegantly explained. Now, for me, as a clinician, though we are going with the higher dose of a 5 into 10.10, that's what he talked about. But the efficacy is far higher with the half dose. Now, for that, head-to-head, no trials have been done. But looking at it, I think right at the beginning, now the UK is rolling up with the both doses higher which have been there. And later on, probably they may also go looking at a half the first dose and the second, the full dose, which is going to be. So that's going to be a bit of a complicated thing, because with the smaller and a higher dose, they had a 92% efficacy they are showing it.
Okay.
And whereas when they using it, the both higher doses, efficacy has been brought down to 62%, and combined together it is 70%. And remember one thing, WHO recommends only vaccines which are more than 50% efficacy.
Okay, definitely. That indeed is one data which we all should remember when we talk about efficacy, safety, as well as immunogenicity. Thank you so much, Dr. Dhruv, there for enunciating on that part. Let me bring in Dr. Das. Dr. Das, your views, initial views to make our viewers understand on the dosage criteria as far as several vaccines are concerned, as explained by both Professor Ganguly and Dr. Chaudhry here.
Yeah, as Professor Ganguly and Dr. Chaudhry has already explained it so nicely, that the dosage criteria. So, like as of now, all the vaccines that are in the approval stage, they require 2 doses. That's what that they are saying. Some reports are coming with a single dose of the Pfizer vaccine that Dr. Ganguly mentioned, but still, approval is for 2 doses and separated by 21 to 28 days. And now, usually, subunit vaccine, like the way the proteins are coming, or or the mRNA is coming, or the killed vaccine, which is we are getting through Covaxin, they require more than 1 doses as opposed to like attenuated vaccines. They often work with 1 dose. So obviously, giving 2 doses to the entire population is a huge challenge, and it's covering that is a big issue, and that's why the countries are going down with the doses, making it half the doses, and to see, tweaking it to see if they get the equal amount of immunogenicity, or spacing it further, as Dr. Ganguly mentioned, by 3 months instead of 3 weeks to 4 weeks. So that more people are covered, because the main purpose is to vaccinate as many people as possible to break the transmission chain. That is the purpose. Okay. So covering more people is very critical in this case, and that is a big challenge. So now for India, what we got only 50 million doses of the Covishield and 10 million doses of the Covaxin is ready now. So that's why we are giving the high risk population first. But obviously, we need many more doses to cover the sizable population, adequate population to break the chain of transmission.
Vishal.
Dr. Dhruv, yes, please.
So if you give me permission, what
please
is happening is what Professor Ganguly and what Dr. Das has said is true. But at the same time, we must also keep it in our mind that probably we will be needing around 60% of the population, because at certain data which is coming up and evolving is that at certain places, especially in the urban centers, the incidence of, if we do a seropositive thing today, serological trials or serological mapping, it's a very significant number of our urban population is there. Why I am saying so is sharing it with you is, when we started the Covaxin trial, at my place in Rohtak, we hardly found less than 3% of the people were, say, seropositive. Now, when we are going into phase 3, literally 15 to 18% of the people who are coming and volunteering it are now seropositive. And we are finding it that at a different places in the country where this is going on, because this is the only vaccine which is going at trial at 25 places at various places in the country. We are seeing the data of positivity varying on the day one itself of seropositivity from 15 to 40%. So probably we need to take those things also into account.
Okay, definitely. That is one significant set of data which needs to be taken into account. Let me go back to Professor Ganguly here. And Professor Ganguly, I'd like to bring you back on one aspect which you mentioned in your first response, and that is about mixing of dosages, mixing of vaccine dosages. That's a very, very important aspect here, because there are, several vaccine candidates which are getting nod approval from the regulators in various countries. We have 2 vaccine candidates which have been approved. So how prudent is mixing of vaccine dosages, 1, and 2, is it scientifically allowed? That's also a very important here. And if at all it is done, then in what conditions?
Actually, Vishal, the main issue, you have asked a very good question and it needs discussion. But one thing I want to tell Dr. Dhruv, that even if there is an antibody present in the population, their response might be slightly skewed this side or that side, but they are given vaccination. It has happened for cholera, it has happened for others, and it can be given. The mixing is needed for one very important reason, that suddenly there will be 3 or 4 vaccines in the market, and the distribution problems which the America has faced and which UK is facing is very, very revealing. And in India, we had, for the pneumococcal vaccine and for the rotavirus vaccine, we had discussed that we may have to mix the second vaccine into areas because of the vaccine availability. So we had a discussion in health ministry, and the opinion was this, that in normal circumstances you have to do a small study. You have to look at whether there are SAEs or not, more SAEs or the same SAE, and you have to see that immune responses are stable. So you have to do a small study in that case. But in this scenario, the main thing which Britain is doing, that they are now planning to immunize their whole population. They are in a big trouble. The same is United States is seeking, that very quickly, although they have a priority list which is slightly different than Indian priority list, they want to cover as much of their population as quickly as possible. For these reasons and the distribution glitches which are coming up, they might have to use mixing of the vaccine. They have already decided on the mixing of the vaccine, and they are with their regulator. They are not doing all those studies. They want to generate this data in the field when they mix these studies. So at this time, the government facing the pandemic are trying to use innovative measures, consulting the scientific community, and sometimes scientific community is divided. But what they are doing, that after they get the scientific community major opinion, then they go to regulator, and regulator then gives the decision. No country will ever introduce anything into the population without the regulator's nod. So mixing is a very important arena, and in India there will be at least 5 vaccines in another 3 months or 4 months, and the distribution glitches which we are seeing in other countries, because we're a large country, we will see. At the moment, what we had decided, that in one district we will introduce one vaccine, and the other vaccine will be introduced in another place. It may not happen like that. What is there in the future, we do not know. So we need to be ready to mix the vaccines if there is a need, and generate the data.
Okay. So we should be ready for that. Dr. Dhruv, your views on that mixing of dosages, since you've been involved with the clinical trial as well. How prudent is that, and is that possible with the vaccine candidates which have been granted approval here in India and the ones which are in developmental stages as well?
You see, Professor Ganguly has given an excellent example of a pneumococcal vaccine, where we have the one is a polysaccharide and another is a polysaccharide conjugate. So one we are taking advantage of immunogenicity, another we are taking advantage, the horizontal and vertical advantage we are taking up there. So that has worked pretty fine in the field as far as that part is concerned. Now all these things are coming up, and probably end of the day is that when your immunogenic system is there, probably what he says, theoretically it is possible that they may act as an addendum. The only thing which I will need to look at there is that there should not be, as he has said, is a serious adverse effect. But looking at the pandemic and the country, the population, we have to do, whether we like or dislike it, we have probably to go for it sooner or later, depending upon the availability of the vaccines which are there. The only thing what we do sure is that probably they work like, if you are having a Covishield and you work as a Sputnik, let's say, giving an example, both are working with an adenovirus basis, so they can work out with each other. Similarly, like we are having a Covaxin, it's a whole kill traditional method of vaccination. That is where we are, because we have to understand 2 we are giving. Second one is a booster dose. Now the question which Professor Ganguly said, he said it very clearly that cholera had antibodies, no doubt about, sir. The only thing my question will, as a regulator and as a clinician, will be looking at it, because you have been the doyen and have been my teacher also, will be with cases who are already having an antibody, will one dose will be good enough? Is it acting as a booster for that? Then do you really need to have a second dose in the people who are already having a significant antibody? Because these are the questions we don't know the answers. Only we have started collecting the data. If that is boosting it up, probably we may come up that you may only need a single shot, people who are only having who had recovered from COVID, like you and me. And then subsequently, when we go for the vaccine, instead of 2, we may simply need 1. And similarly, there are significant immunocompromised people. We need to see whether the 2 shots are good enough to boost to give them the protection, or you need to act somewhere else, or you need to. So there are a lot of possibilities which are there. And I think as a clinician and as a basic scientist, I would like to keep that option open. And immune system works in a very different fashion the way we think.
Okay.
Vishal, can I give a brief answer
Yes,
to
yes, Professor Ganguly, please.
Dr. Dhruv? Though he has very nicely put something for discussion, and it's a very pertinent question. Actually, if we see like papillomavirus vaccine, that is cervical cancer vaccine, it started with 3 doses. Then a study was done that 2 doses are sufficient. Now a study has been done where 1 dose is sufficient. So after clinical trial, huge data set, 40,000 data set are provided, and sometimes small studies are done. At the moment, what is being done is this, that it is coming up like Sputnik is not doing in their trial in India. They are not looking at efficacy. They are looking at neutralizing antibodies and T cell responses through ELISpot. What people are thinking that, and what data is there, that immunize as many people with one shot. So cover the population to stop transmission, reach 70% level of the population which has got antibody, and transmission stops. Then give a second injection if there is a need. And that is how the people are thinking, because it is not that data has been submitted and it ends there. Lot of data is there for a secondary and tertiary analysis that is being done now. And new things are being revealed. So scientific community has a big role to produce new thinking based on the analysis of data and evidence, and the regulator has to respond very quickly about that, because we simply do not have time in some of the countries. And now if South African strain comes, the way the UK strain has gone to now more than 20 countries, it will be a disaster, because South African strain is one of the most dangerous strains which have come out through mutation. So we need to quickly squelch the transmission as quickly as possible. So thinkers, I'm very good that you brought in this discussion today. It has turned out very well.
Definitely,
maybe the scientific community and the government will address these issues.
Definitely. It is an evolving process. Wonderful way to put the views out there, both by Professor Ganguly and Dr. Dhruva as well. Before we conclude, let's have the final comments from Dr. Das as well. Dr. Das, your views on the mixing of dosages here, as elaborately pointed out by all aspects by Professor Ganguly and Dr. Dhruva as well.
Yeah, I think, both of them have elaborately discussed it and brought up all the relevant questions. So there is hardly anything to add, but I fully agree with Dr. Ganguly that the purpose is now, the target is now to give at least 1 dose to as many people as possible, so that, some antibody, some response we hope that will be there with even 1 dose. And then, the transmission is halted. And then we get, by this time we get data accumulated. We may carry out small studies of mixing of vaccines, as Professor Ganguly has suggested, to see that whether they work and what type of vaccines can be mixed. And then, we go for the next dose, as Britain has already spaced it by 3 months. So, I think, we can also think about that we instead of giving a second dose at 21 or 28 days, we may give it later on. But first, whatever vaccine is available, as many people as possible, we should probably cover. And breaking the transmission is very important, because newer strains are coming, mutant strains. So, we do not know when things will go out, where, we are pretty much, now balanced. In India, we are well set, I would say, compared to the Europe and US, but things may go out of hand any moment of time.
Okay, definitely. Breaking the chain is really important out there. Thank you so much, Dr. Das, as well as Dr. Dhruv Chaudhry and Professor N.K. Ganguly as well, for sharing your valuable inputs out there on this very crucial aspect of our battle against COVID-19 pandemic, that is the dosage norms for vaccines, and whether or not mixing of vaccine dosages is also an option out there. The experts obviously deliberating, and it is for the scientific community to come to a conclusion based on which the regulators might take a final call in respective countries. So this is all about the vaccine dosages, but just because vaccines are here doesn't mean that we can lower our guard. I would once again remind you that we need to continue with COVID appropriate behavior, and it is just a 3 simple step procedure. One is always wear a mask, wash your hands very properly, and ensure that you maintain physical distancing of 6 feet. So this 3 simple step process is all you require to safeguard yourself and your dear ones as well. Thank you for watching Rajya Sabha Television.